I was talking to my mom, and the dog's really healthy. Like, our dog is over 100 years old, and he's like in tip-top condition. Yes, I wouldn't go so far to say that there's nothing difficult about being 101 or 100-year-old Bichon Shih Tzu, but very happy with that, and I wish health and long life to everything. Let's all do that. What do we say? Have a moment of soul generosity, soul necessity. Yeah, that's the important thing. Mom, I always think, Mom and Buddy are healthy, everything will be good. And I just want to note for the record today, without going on about it, I've had threatening, off balance, or negative energy connections related to 6 different women in the world today. I had a humorous thing as I left the store. I realized one day there was all these women around me, and I really wanted to leave. And the electric door of a fairly good-sized supermarket, not very large but not very small, stopped working. I walked up to it like I've done hundreds of times, and it literally didn't open that day. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah, just how I was telling my mom today that estrogen, right? If you had like 2 happily married couples on a ship, that'd be fine. But if you put like 6 men and 10 women, or 6 men and 6 women onto a ship on a cruise, what do you think is going to happen? And I don't want to say like all yin energy is bad. I'm just like, it's like honoring the force that is woman. Isn't not also the force of chaos? Isn't that why evil is actually related to water, right? And El means water. Eve El. Evil, Eve El. It should be called Eve El because it's related to water. Water that is so, its greatest evil is how versatile it is. It's part of the, you know how stuff just gets everywhere? There's like a super saturated level of communication among the various substrates of the quintessence of life, in which our mind is a most natural inhabitant, and from which relationship all of the limbs and senses of man, nature, and heaven, if you will, have been drawn. And it never stops. Okay. By the way, there is reason for unhappiness. I'm not saying there isn't shock in the world. Shock is an animal in itself, and it is a response to any and all chronic and acute challenges to the fundamental judgment of the soul of man. It's an offense to the sun. An offense to man is an offense to the sun. And so we see offenses to the sun in the language because it is appalling. And Apollo is a pall over the sun. It's also an apple. Apple is a pall over the sun. The forbidden apple is the pall over the soul of man. Yeah, I do this for free. It's all right. You don't have to pay me money. Just silent admiration will do. I get to be arrogant. You get to be nonplussed. And we all get what we want. Hopefully I'll masturbate again at some point in the week. I masturbated yesterday out here. It was the first time in several days, and it was good. Although I don't have anyone to masturbate to. Just this young 18, 19-year-old girl that works at the gas station. And she's wearing these tight blue jeans one day, a little top. And it's not even that I'm physically attracted to young girls that much. It's just that I know her and she knows me and we're friendly. And she has a nice warm energy. And I honestly, when I first met her, thought she was 24 or 25. But she was wearing all this baggy clothing, right? And I think young women like to feel old and sometimes can seem older than they are, especially in that age range. And I've noticed that. I had a stalker online who started out as 16 all the way till 20 for 4 years. And first thing she's like, oh, I'm older than you think. I thought she was 40 from her comments on my YouTube. And then one day she told me she wanted to have sex with me and that she was 16 years old. Or that she would, but she couldn't because she's 16. And it was just like, oh. And it was like this feeling of lust rose up in my body. And then I deleted her from my channel. It was like, just even over the internet, it was just like my body just physically responded. So that's, whose fault is that? You know what I mean? It's like maybe no one's, but like yin energy just gets in places. Like, so I've had female stalkers as friends, and it's like they're silly putting with estrogen everything around you. Before you know it, you're fucking in a straitjacket. Women are creators. They can weave a web of life, or they can weave a web of deception, right? I'm not saying it's only a woman thing, but we have to acknowledge the evil and greatness and ferocity of female energy, in as much as it's even women, or if it's not women, it's, super personal or transpersonal. In other words, it's just individuals who get caught up in what we could call estrogen-oriented poisoning or industrial poisoning, and we shouldn't. necessarily place it on one gender, but we I think in the process of understanding our own pain and that of others, are going to want to objectify various genders, as I objectify women, and say, look, a lot of women make me feel uncomfortable. And then through a pattern of relationships, I draw various conclusions by being honest about everything and everyone who makes me uncomfortable. Okay? And as a man, I am very careful, but I resent the fact of how careful I have to be. I've had 2 or 3 YouTube channels deleted talking about these things, right? Granted, being angry and this, but I increasingly qualified all my remarks. Qualified. This is why I hate women, or this is why I'm a misogynist, and this is why, right? And this is how women could benefit from listening to my anger. Anger is not the same, or hate even, is not necessarily violent. The real violence is when you stop listening to people. The real violence is that's when you're objectifying me and my emotions, because you are going to need to be angry in your life sometime. And a woman victim is going to be angry. Do you tell her anger to shut up? It's just that you don't know how to learn from anger. It's hard to learn from. I don't wish it on anybody. One of the worst things about being criminalized is the anger. It's part of the shock, and a shock has a mind of its own, and human shock is like an animal that moves through time. The core of it is in some sense our greatness, and those who have dared to put unnecessary stress upon the greatness and the full range of the genius of who we are actually biologically as human beings. Like, science doesn't really tell you that. Science is a very small fragment of what the large circle of knowledge should really include, and does include, in your mind and in your body. So every day you have to enter into a suspension of disbelief to play the very minuscule, if grandiose, roles that you find yourself able or forced to play. So I asked earlier, if someone says they're a police officer or a surgeon, you get an idea of what they do. You get an impression of them. If someone asked me, what do? I could say, I'm an academic. And they would say, and I said, I don't want to say anymore. That would give someone like an impression. Maybe it would be ominous, maybe it would be like this, maybe it would seem like a powerful dude. If I said, oh, I'm a self-described academic, and I'm not affiliated with any institution except what I can imagine in my own mind, then what I'm doing is what I've done all my life. So, oh yeah, I do this, but it's not a big deal. Oh yeah, I just walk every day, but it's not a big deal. So I always make sure that people don't feel bad or small in relating to me, because I've always had a good mind, and ever since I was young, there are people who would get jealous or manipulative based on how smart they thought I was. So, how smart they thought I were, sorry. I was? See, I don't even know. I'm not that smart. But how smart I were. How smart I were in those days. The English language is not enough. Captain Cook couldn't even make it do what he needed to do. The ship that he was in was like his mother, and it wanted to kill him. And that's why part of him was a rapist. But the other part of him, the part of him that subdued such energies, was necessary so he could command the universe. By the way, that was part of an episode on Star Trek. By the way, can you see? Body is so healthy, that's so great. By the way that you see, Buddy's well as can be. He's 100, almost 101 years old. I love it. My mom doesn't always listen to me. I told her the other day that he could live for 3 more years easily. And you know what the vet told her a week later? He could live for 2 or 3 more years. The doctor told my mom the same thing that I told her, but she didn't hear me when I said it. Well, you're not a doctor. And it's like, well, if my mom started listening to me, the irony, of course, is that she doesn't really need to listen to me. My thoughts aren't that essential, but still. Whoa, what's that? Listen to that. What's the sound? It's a non-ordinary sound. That was a non-ordinary sound. Interesting. Wow, that was a creep sound. Makes you want to get going. Yeah, so let's keep recording for a bit. Like 6, 7 women and connected people, probably some tertiary parts, that are carrying negative energy toward me. So I did some ceremony right away as soon as the feelings came up after talking to my mom. I was like, and did some ceremony, worked it through. Maybe one day I'll understand. My dad has, I think it was hard until one day. It shouldn't have been, but it wasn't. Like for people who have abusive fathers, for instance, it can be really hard to understand that they are abusive people. I've been writing and thinking, if you will, about this subject, or had a voice in the matter, all of my post-pubescent life, and I don't mind saying, though it may take away from my supposed intelligence in your mind, that I can come and go as to whether or not I understand why my father was so abusive and what kind of person he really is. Like, are you this person? Are you this person? And my dad is actually a very emotionally very mercurial human being. And you get a sense that such people are hiding their emotions a lot because, it's to their advantage to do so, especially when they were young. You start to get that slippery issue coming. There are brain mechanic reasons for that. So our brains do change in their function, in their perspective function. I don't want to say it's a permanent condemnation, just like Christianity, but it's something to acknowledge. We're not without our resources as human beings, but a lot of those resources take us into very violent or codependent relationships with the world. That doesn't mean they're wrong, because it's a road to restoration. In other words, like say if you were born in a prison camp, you would have to live according to the prison camp. But if you ever wanted to live outside the prison camp, you have to try living as though you weren't born in a prison camp. So how do you live as though you weren't born in a prison camp if you're born in a prison camp? And maybe it's not exactly the same, maybe you don't like the example, but I think for a lot of people, certainly people who feel like they've been violated by society, it's not going to solve all your problems by hating society, but it's a factor, isn't it? It's a difficult one, it's an unwieldy one. Are we dealing with the morass of all human thoughts? Are we dealing with the morass of all human thought as it has been cowed by superlative intrusions into their developmental loyalties to various ideas and things that are imperatives in terms of their deep pathological sense of survival as groups, individuals, and so forth. So, doesn't mean everything's bad, but when something does go bad, these are very remarkable things to consider, right? So, people could say, well, yeah, you could hate society at the end. And yes, you can, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't. It's a component of understanding violence. It doesn't mean that everyone's having the worst experience of the world, thankfully, right? Society is good for some people. sometimes maybe people all of their lives are going to feel like society's been pretty good to them, even if it hasn't been. And there's no way you can say that my way is more preferable to theirs. In fact, in many respects, it can't possibly be, can it? But strangely enough, that's not because society is so good. That's because society is so bad that it can only be as good as bad can be. It's a very esoteric thing if you've ever been placed in a position where you could consider, or needed to, that your mother and father were disposed to violent behavior or highly codependent behavior, which is always based on survival, I understand, in a good clinical sense of the word. And yes, different orders, groups, people, races, aptitudes, turnings, responses to the world's various challenges, and how we become divergent in the voices we feel that we should have for ourselves and our personal boundaries. But your boundaries never get so hurt. But it is not a matter of discussion. It's not an esoteric conversation when someone hurts you, is it? It's not esoteric at all. Something has happened that might have started off esoteric, like the world's overall industrial influence on mommies and daddies in the 1930s and 40s, right? Okay? In a way that disposed them to a range of industrial competence and enthusiasm, which did not provide for, if anything and everything else, probably not for their voices, but certainly not for their ability to make provisions for the emotional as well as the physical and social survival of their child. So in an ideal home, yes, maybe you want your children to work, be disciplined, good people, but you're not going to do it by whipping them every day and yelling at them and punching them in the head. That's your deal with children, right? In the ideal world, at least as most people see it. So if children don't get that provision for their safety in something as seemingly innocuous as income uncertainty or the appearance of wealth inequality, or the loss of the father and all the other ways that people lose their parents. But this isn't just divorce. People can lose their parents every other day due to a range of forces that usually take people into the realm of evil and the esoteric. But when you're around it, it's like that is an emotionally cathartic way of describing something that has roots in the human brain. And what happens when emotions and the pain response sensors in the world, in the brain, in accomplishing the priorities which are set before them since the womb, cannot accomplish an adequate or subordinate the priority of an adequate consideration for you and your voice in the world. This is where some parents would throw out their hands and say, children are infinitely sensitive. You're talking about a world where you want your children to live in a padded room. Granted, that is a cathartic, sort of esoteric statement, isn't it? Because of course I don't want that. So, right? But it's cathartic, just as cathartic as things that I could say that seem esoteric, but they have practical roots, like in maybe your fear or someone's fear that you can't be too sensitive to children because that's worse than being abusive, right? You can't isolate them from the world because then they'll never be able to live in it. And yet, I can't live in the world, but I wasn't isolated from the world. I was exposed to too much of it, too soon. And that too soon could be, oh, too bad for me, and it could be too bad for you. You don't get to listen to a video I might have made in a parallel universe where that wasn't the case. Right? So, as to what I do for a living, I don't really tell people much because, let's say I made a video like this today, and someone asked, hey, what did you do today? And I say, I'm not going to say listen to the video, am I? You think I'm going to say listen to the video at the girl at the supermarket? Or the cougar female that comes up to me today? Right? Right? So that they can have some amusing thing. Because I don't be rude, but they're not intelligent enough to really, they're probably listening to this right now. They're not intelligent enough to really take an interest. Like, it's not just intelligence, it's a lack of interest. It's like a baby that doesn't want to take their mother's nipple. I have to whack the nipple against your mouth. Here it is, here's the nipple. Right? Movies, for instance, get you interested in what's happening, don't they? Yet you have a stake in it. If you don't have a stake in what I'm talking about, it's not interesting. If it's not interesting, it doesn't matter how intelligent anybody is. Who cares that I'm smart? Who cares? It doesn't matter. There's no reason to have any interaction here, right? Right? Forgive me for assuming that I'm a reasonably intelligent person, because I know it takes a lot of work and a lot of time to talk about these things, and that will never make me an expert. I understand. I want to write that on every video. I fully understand that, right? That's my obligation to you. Your obligation to me is really just only stay here if you think it's good for you. And I'll try to explain why I think it should be, because I'm trying to explain it to myself. Because I never feel comfortable talking about these things. I'm trying to work harder at being a little more generous with my heart, easy on my heart, so that I don't get to keep myself too embittered about things. There's definitely a value to that. There's a lot you can learn from it. But it's been a difficult journey for a while, so I'm trying to create a more positive household. So things that come up that could turn into an argument, I just sort of try to parlay them. My mom says some pretty, brazen things sometimes. And then I feel something yesterday. I feel the anxiety. I express my discomfort. My mom dismisses it. And then today, I asked a completely fresh question from another direction. And boom, she gave me exactly the truth. So now she was ready to tell the truth. Boom. Okay. That's better. Even though I disliked it, I said, well, that's, I trust you about these things and I respect you this, but you can understand that's kind of a bad energy. And she's like, yeah, okay, we'll leave it at that. Because the fact that she can tell me, right, is actually protecting me. If she were hiding that, it would be worse. She's betrayed the confidence of this other woman. The woman's negativity still makes it in with this person. I don't want to give their identity, because I don't think that much of them anymore. I've had enough of them. I've had enough of my dad, because I slowly learned. I learned over and over again. Of course, anytime someone hits you, it's like, they're obviously not a nice person, right? But especially if they're a father. But what you learn from the abuse and from the not abuse is that there's a person here who's behaving this way for a reason. And while the environment you share with them strongly induces a pressure that you're not something not okay with you, fathers who hit you think there's something not okay with you. They probably think you're not okay for complaining about it. If they would, they'd probably punch you again for bleeding. That's how this kind of personality or schizophrenic complex works. But by schizophrenic, I don't mean that these people should be in an institution. I mean that this is what they have suffered from institutions already, right? And as I talked about yesterday, that schizophrenia is usually something that young men are accused of. And it is an accusation, it's not a diagnosis. And the sort of literature on the subject, if you surf through it, schizophrenia is like nothing. And they'll tell you like, oh, they think that people they literally write this in books. They think that young men in particular are schizophrenic because they're not having enough sex and they're not working enough. And so that's what they categorize you as. Young men who aren't having enough sex and aren't working, who, by the way, have probably been sexually abused or being scapegoated or gaslighted by families that are suffering from industrial estrogen poisoning. Okay, and then people do everything they need to do, but they don't behave the way they're supposed to because they're playing roles, they're in portrayal, which is the effect of as though the intoxicant of the range and degree of the suspension of disbelief to which, around which the brain develops as groups and individuals over centuries. So you're never going to get rid of domestic abuse, right? People worry about COVID, they worry about things they see on the news, but if you draw a 1,000-mile circle around your house, right? Climate change is not the issue. All this shit is not the issue. The coming of Jesus is not the issue. It's domestic violence and drug and alcohol addiction and generations of the effect of industrial poisoning. That's what's going on in your world. When people talk about the world, they're not talking about that 1,000-mile circle around them. They're talking about esoteric things like nations and regions and political eras, ideological debates, and critical fears about what happens if this group gets its way. None of that really matters. What's the reality of the climate? There's a danger. Space aliens, danger. Dinosaurs coming out of Jurassic Park, danger. Right? Viruses, danger. We can kill an invisible virus that probably didn't exist, but we can't get rid of domestic violence. Are you kidding me? Right? So the society, and good early feminists and other people did work like this before it got co-opted, is that the world is very war-oriented. And yes, it involves men, because the sacrifice of men is one of its primary objects. So you have to consider that. When women do violence in the world, and they do, and the larger part of it, unfortunately, doesn't ever get really dealt with, and men are more likely to suffer in silence and not even know what's happening. Okay, yes, I'm passionate on the subject. It involves my life, it involves my health, and my ability to continue breathing. So instead of getting really angry right now, I'm just breathing and telling you that. And that is also because there's a primary object, obviously, of deranging and harming women. Okay? So we need to take that out of the esoteric and see how that relates to our personal lives in that 1,000-mile radius. And it does. So I haven't had any actual problems with women today, but a range of 6 or more women plus their men have indicated a negative interaction with the fabric of my life. Isn't that interesting? And then I just acknowledge, hear that bird? And my protection, nature is telling me that the joy of nature is all my protection. Just sort of, where do I need to be? How can I change my focus? How can I focus on what's important to me and not let issues that maybe never had anything to do with me begin with, but also don't ignore them either. And the emotion tells me, in a sense, how serious to take them. So I have another stalker in the area. I'm not going to be aggressive with her, but she is a stalker. She's a different kind of stalker, but certainly quite common in my walk. She's the weak woman. Just as I'm losing another weak woman. These are the women that will come up to you and chat and be friendly, kind of natural person. And then they'll start telling you their problems. Right? Okay? Which, if you tell a stranger a problem, and you're planning on seeing them from time to time, what are they supposed to do? What are they to you at that point? What role are you giving them? And why is it that it's always women who do that? Right? Fascinating. I mean, why do you want my time for that? Hey? Like, what? My life is so easy, I can spend my time listening to your personal issues because we happen to walk in the same park at the same time at the same place? I don't think so. You can book an appointment maybe and give me $10,000 an hour because that's what I'm worth. So it's on the vanilla end of sexual harassment, but they start sharing things because that's their personality. But the personality is not just how people protect themselves, and it is, but it's how they project things out to other people to get what they want from them. Right? And everything about past personality to me is abnormal. Right? What I notice when I interact with people's personalities is I never get what I want. Right? And they will never get what they want from me. I love people who don't have a personality. They're just a person. And I know a one man who's like that in the area. It's only the men who are like that. Right? Forget personality. They're just a really great guy. That's what I like. I don't want your personality. I don't care about your fucking personality problems. Right? Right? The only role you have to play in my life is whoever it is we're born to be, and we're all struggling and hungering to be because it's only natural in any world to do so. That is the happiest for us and those we love, and is capable of wishing them happiness and improving your own life and those around you, because that's your natural identity as a human biological being. The flesh and blood of the sun and all the generosity of the sun, right? So you don't need religion. You don't need a personality problem, right? We can get rid of all those. Our labors should be the labors of the sun. Our paths should be the paths of the sun. And our lives should be made sound as they were with our mommy and daddy when we were born. on some level, anywhere. It's like, it's a sacred thing. You never go to any church and it says, your mommy and daddy are the most sacred thing about our church. Sorry to take their time away from you the one day of the week where they're not working and you're not in school. And the church takes you for an hour, 2, 3 hours, right? Taking you away from your family so they can shove crap down your throat and take your money. But they make it look nice, don't they? It's a study in social pathology. But underneath it, yeah, what is the core? Save me, save me. I need to survive. My personality is developed to survive. Hopefully, it's just the way life is. And if you can't convince yourself of that, the Christian will say, well, there's original sin, and that's why it's become the way life is, even though on some level it feels like it shouldn't be that way. And that's sin, tempting you to the ways of the devil, and thinking for yourself, and accepting that no matter how you behave or everyone else behaves, none of which seems to be all that perfect when you put it together in any combination, and certainly not for billions of other people who had to die to pay for the cost of living in the 20th century. Right? So you kind of, it's okay to acknowledge the shocking proportions of it and say, maybe I can deal with that myself. Maybe this group stuff isn't so. Everyone apparently is responding to everything that this world is. You can do that your way, right? Everything is a defense mechanism that people like to turn into a survival mechanism, and the brain turns into survival, turns into a way of life, turns into a language, turns into a job, turns into a religion, turns into your sex, your gender, and who you are, and everything you do every day of your life, and even how you're going to die, and the circumstances attending your birth, and what you talk about, and what you don't, and what you can think about, and what you can't, and how you can protect yourself and how you can't, and what costs you're willing to bear, because they're not wrong. They're just a part of life, and that's the way God made it. And you can learn more about love the more pain you're in, because that's what Lord Vishnu wants from you. And you wrap that up into a package, and you stamp it and say, approved human being. Next. So that's scary. But yeah, I just thought today, with all the negativity the last 2 days from my mom's social connection, and it's weird, like, I had another female connected to this network accuse me of trying to influence my mother's life in some way, which I don't, and my mom knows that, and we've talked about it. And I don't even know, but not to say it's not possible, but this other person, female, is constantly attempting to influence my mother, right? But that's approved of. So purify. Even if you're a good person, but you're around sick people, spend every day purifying. Grounding, purifying, finding joy. And we do it differently. I don't like the way most people do it, but I do it through direct honesty, through the mouth and walking. So I do an exercise, if you will, where I can talk into this camera all day. I'm a good influence on my mom. I like it. I like how I influence her. I say certain things, and she does get certain things. She was like, I said some things, maybe complaining about what happened walking one day or the other, and she said, why do you do that? I said, well, it's exercise. And she's like, yeah, you're right. I said, exercise is difficult. That doesn't mean you don't do it. And she says, oh, okay, I guess you're right. And she actually agreed with me. She understands that. That shows a physical intelligence. So my mom understands physical intelligence and staying healthy. And she's trying to figure out how to exercise more. So these things, they plant seeds. I don't have to lecture to my mom. I don't have to try to control her. The influence is natural, right? She gets the benefit. I can feel a warmth passing through me as I say that. She gets the full benefit from my labors. The natural sharing and natural warmth from me to her about whatever's good about my life. She can take, just like you can take, whatever is in there for you and just absorb it. And it's nutrient rich. And it's free. A lot of people would probably rather spend hundreds of thousands of dollars than spend 50 years in a cult to hear this. And they still wouldn't want to hear it. The Buddhists don't want to hear it. The Muslims don't want to hear it. The Christians don't hear it. The Satanists don't want to hear it. But I'm a Satanist and I'm a witch, and I think you don't have to be either to want to hear this. right? Because I know enough to know that different, like even with knowledge, no matter what I find important, it's not like, well, you have to take my words with a grain of salt because I'm so humble. You should do your research. No, it's everybody has their own way. And so a way can be perfectly sacred to me, and someone can have a perfectly other sacred way of living, and we don't have to be in conflict. We acknowledge that. That, we could be, because humans are dicks, but we actually, we don't have to be in conflict. And isn't that great to just trust? We have to trust every day. People can hurt us, but we trust that their way of life is good. And hopefully they can trust that your way of life is good. If, I'm not hurting you, you're not hurting me, let's assume that each our way of life is good. My whole life, I meet a lot of people, I've known a lot of people who don't assume my way of life is good. And their wonderful, great way of life means that my way of life doesn't matter at all. They don't see the value of it. Because in some sense, they're living in portrayal, like an actor on the stage. And they're not getting the value they think they are. And I think there's ways of mitigating around that and saying, okay, they're getting some value. But it's like, for lack of a better comparison, someone who eats too much and doesn't crap enough and becomes fat. But getting fat is only one of the things that can happen to people who are all, say, undergoing certain kinds of stresses in sequence. And if you had something at a certain sequence based on your aptitude and the nature of your spirit and what you're doing in the world, you might start to get fat. It's that simple, right? And I might start to get more verbal. And someone else might, their foot might turn in, or someone gets a mole on their back. And all these things. Because our creation, even of our bodies, is not in a vacuum, is it? And it's absorbing the environment as the environment is calling forth who we are and what we're here to do in the world. So our purpose is always intact, whether you're thin or fat, whether you're healthy or sick. Your purpose is always intact. It's a question of seeing it in sequence. If now these sequences have led to you being in a state that you don't like because you're eating too much and you're not crapping enough, and you can notice that, then first thing you have to do is find a way to crap more, and you will stop gaining weight. That in itself is if you don't want to be as fat, you got to find a way to crap more. You have no idea how much I focus on crapping every day, and how proud I am of my craps. And I can't control them. It's not even a control thing. It's like it's like watching your child grow up. That's how I watch my crap, right? I have to be a good daddy to my crap. It's like I have to let them be. I have to let them go. And sometimes I wonder where they are. They've disappeared. Where are you, my crap? And I look at what's going on in my life. And the only way that my craps ever gets disrupted is from sexually predatory women, which on a large vanilla to malicious scale means a lot of women who don't know they're being predatory, but their personality complex shows just how aggressive the personality complex is, and there's not a reciprocity. So you have to skunk them sometimes and send out a little hostile smoke signal and say, you gotta back off a little bit, right? And you don't want to do that. And usually those people just stop talking to you because they don't realize, they're just taking too much of your time. But it's so much a part of their personality, you'll notice, that the things that are part of people's personalities are the things they'll never change. Because the provenance of the personality is like the provenance of one's participation in a cult, right? It's not normal, right? You say, oh, well, it's just his personality. Well, I talked to a police officer once about some men who were violent to me, and they said, not uselessly, but he said to me, that's just how they roll. Well, that's how people roll, saying that's their personality. That's just how they are. It's like, that's helpful, right? It's a helpful philosophy, it worked, diffused my sense of victimization, whatever, so. But it's also kind of a super philosophy. I'm free, thank you to the police officer, he actually did a good job. I'm free then to go away and be angry, or I don't have to accept that's just how they roll. In fact, I didn't accept that's just how they roll. That's why I confronted the people, right? But it may be, if I understand correctly, the job of the police is not to really deal with how people roll. So even if they're rolling violently, unless they're committing a crime, and they can prosecute them, right? So as a private citizen, so to speak, but not really a private citizen because I'm not an employee the way other people are, right? If a citizen is an employee, right? And someone can extort you into being an employee. My sister offered my mom, as part of a negative plan, this is what this woman I didn't want to mention, a house, but then said my mother had to, quote, work for it. She's 73 years old, and she's dealt with a lot, right? Now, that's maybe comical, maybe just a way of influencing someone or saying something between them personally, but it also says that my sister has found a role for my mother in being her employee because she anticipates my mom being her dependent as she gets older. She sees that as a cute or an intelligent way to talk to my mom, and it's actually quite infantilizing. And it turns her into an employee, which any role, employee or otherwise, is not healthy, is it? And it shows you that's an unhealthy thing to say to someone. If you're going to buy your mom a house, you don't have like someone on TV like, oh, I'm going to buy them a house, but they have to work for it. And it's like they're a 73-year-old woman who's dealt with enough shit in this life that she deserves a Veterans Day all her fucking own, just like maybe your mom and dad, right? No matter how violent they've become to you, because like I said, my father, is an abusive sort of person, unfortunately, and they're sadistic, and they say things and do things that don't reveal a great deal of care for you and the agonies they may have put you through. That's very hard to take, right? And he says, well, they just say things and that's just how they roll. But if you should always assume in terms of codependency that people are saying what they mean. It's only that you have to listen clearly to what they're saying. When I feel anxious, when my sister calls my mom and I say, hey mom, she just makes me uncomfortable. She's like a criminal. And she says, oh, you're just being silly. And then the next day she says, yeah, you're right. She's actually bears you a lot of ill will. Then you're getting the truth on both days, just in two different ways, right? And because I acknowledged the truth yesterday, she's telling me the truth today. So my labor yesterday, though it seemed fruitless in my confrontation with her, diplomatic, has now borne the fruit, the truth. And Satanism, really, in part, is about getting the truth out of people to make yourself safer. If you want a Satanism subsection, domestic abuse subsection, Landon Seeley and how he deals with it, but that would be the way I would put that. I'd file that away and say, well, if I can call myself a Satanist, please include this as part of Satanism in your model of that differentiates personal interests and so forth. But, hello. My one foot is actually getting a little wet already, but that's okay because I have fresh shoes. These shoes last for a few hours. Like it's not really raining very much anymore, so I prefer them to walk in. So. Well, here we are. It's a pretty good day. Looks like a phallus down there. It's all right. It's all right. Please, don't hurt yourself. It's cool. Cool. It's cool. That's my new music. It's cool, eh? It's called It's Cool, my new album. It's cool. So very cool. It's cool. I've noticed things too, though, like professional YouTubers and actors and celebrities, pieces of shit. There's this one thing, it said, I'm uncool, but I'm not cool. I'm not uncool. Or something. It was just like, it's cool to be uncool. There's a song by Beck called Loser. I'm a loser. And he actually has a song he sings to the audience that gets them to think to themselves, I'm a loser. over and over again. And he got awards for it, right? He's also plays Marilyn Manson, right? They play lots of different people in the world, right? It must be fun for them. Because, I mean, they're supplying the talent. You say, what's in it for them? They're supplying the talent and the training, which supersedes that of the citizenry beneath them. So they're wielding lots of witchcraft, but they're wielding competence over you. They're more competent at most things, right? Most things that humans do. Celebrities are in better shape. They have better diets. They have all the science of human longevity available to them since childhood. So they're not stupid. They take care of each other, their families, their marriages last. Prince Charles and Diana were never married. Their real marriages last forever because they know how to make love last. They just don't teach you. They give you a world of marriage and divorce and Nabisco and Shreddies. You can still have, but you have to figure it out yourself, right? And Oprah's not going to tell you, right? And so that's where I want to take human beings a little bit, just not in an angry way, just like, where is this way, not just that I'm doing it, but where is this way as a category that humans, various types, if not all types, take themselves away from all the standards of what people are used to and try to find more for themselves. That's all, right? Don't a lot of us kind of do that? I think we do. At least we seem to talk like we do. I'm not really very affectionate about what people do. I'm an antisocial and I'm a unsocialized person, so I don't understand in what way I'm connected to people, other than the way that I connect to the individuals I meet out here. I'm not sick mentally. I've never been disposed to feel confident about the types of trusts, relationships, and lingo that go along. Lingo, right? Lingus, cunnilingus, lingo, right? Cunnilingus, lingo, linguistics. It's of the vagina. It's all of the yin. It's of sex. It's of work. It's of slavery. So the whole socialization process is part of helping to get you to be a worker and establish your sexual orientation, so that you could go to work and be comfortable enough to have sex with your boss, or a coworker, or to meet your wife while you're serving fries and a Coke to somebody, or at the Christian school you go to be able to be separate from your family, but to feel socially secure enough to initiate coitus with another person. It's actually quite a tremendous thing to do, right? That's why people are so proud of getting older. It's like, wow, I got away from my family and I've established coitus with someone. It's like, right, I've established a relationship with someone who understands that one or both of us are going to have to earn a lot of money in life if any of this relationship is worth anything, right? Okay, that's stamp, approved human. And you don't have to take umbrage at that fact, but you can take umbrage to every sort of detail about it. And look how remarkable it is. And maybe people don't have to do that. But the psychiatric establishment, Freud, Jung, everything, it's all about work, war, and sex, and death, and taxes. That's what all the psychological systems are for, and all the religions. Work, sex, death, and taxes. And establishing relationships, as wonderful as they are, but you're going off the same cliff everybody else is. You understand? You're all moving off the same cliff. You're going to death. Man has created death. It's for the general population to behave as though we love death. And the world, the languages, Egyptology, and all the languages that come out of Egyptian alchemy, which is an invented thing, like Egypt, it's a form of false cultural anthropology, and they guard the anthropological world very, very highly, because the realm of anthropology is how it has all the membranes, in a sense, and that of the religions, of how information is presented in what they call the standard of science, essentially. The scripts that help to determine not just what is true, but how human beings should think. So in an esoteric sense, metaphysics and stuff like that behind the military and the human sacrifice and all that, and homosexuality, it's not to help people just be free or to know things, but to have control over them and alter the way they think and make them feel free and like they know things. Even when Mark Twain said, it's not what you don't know that gets you, it's what you know for sure that just ain't so. Right? Who is also a member of their kind, just like Yeats, right? They know these things. This is obvious to them. They grow up with this knowledge about how they control you. All the actors of the world know this. All the professional actors, all the professional athletes, they all know this. They're all a part of this. All the coaches, all the personalities on TV, all the victims of O.J. Simpson, who didn't really die, all these people, all the so-called victims of Marilyn Manson, which don't exist, or Charles Manson, don't exist, all the fake, all the real, all the talent, right? What's real is the talent behind it, and what's real is the intention behind it, and what's real is the popular response to it at many subliminal levels of such a level of trust that people, you could say, as an hypothesis, for people to live in the world, academically, socially, culturally, that you would have to suppose that there is a deep maternal fracture from within the female womb. You can show this with clinical science, clinical medicine, and clinical research. So now what you can't do, and that would be sophistry, if I didn't add it, is to take that hypothesis and then say you automatically have to jump to the conclusion then, or to derive a logical corollary of this, that this was all wrong and we're all doomed and therefore the world is just a completely awful place and we're just slaves. Even though that's true. Okay, that is true, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? Because obviously it isn't. I mean, people aren't stupid. Even if people don't think the way I do, if this were true, is their happiness any less, if not more, essential? If someone's out there working and they've got 3 children and they're happy right now, is their happiness less or more profound, given what I'm saying? It's more profound. It's more sacred. Literally any way, because if you can be happy, I don't think your life can be that bad, right? And people work themselves into a happiness, right? In some sense, and how could it be that bad? I enjoy walking. I've trained myself to walk. You might enjoy working. You've trained yourself to work. And indeed, anything or any situation has trained us to do, we have probably trained ourselves. Even if you don't like your job, you've trained yourself to not like your job, or you've trained yourself to do something. My mom lets the 100-year-old dog out of the condo every day, and he pees on the carpet. And she hasn't thought yet to pick him up. She's had things on her mind. But to pick him up, as we used to do in the summer, and take him out the door, 25 feet away, where he can pee. When she lets him out the door, he gets the signal to pee. And so there's a lot of urine on that carpet now. Oops. Thankfully, it's dog urine, and it's little dog urine, and he mostly water most of the time, but still, she's gotten a little lazy with that. But I don't want to make her feel silly, because she does a lot of stuff. Not a stuff, she takes care of the dog quite well. And rather than criticize my mom, I look for reasons to enforce her intelligence, her competence, and her positive feelings right now about how well the dog is doing. So just saying, oh, you let the dog piss on the carpet. I'm going to let her figure it out for herself. And if I can establish a psychic environment where she can feel my mind and that my intentions, even unspoken, are positive toward her, even when she might be fumbling or making a mistake, I will gain her trust in a nonverbal level. And that's part of magic as well. Not to manipulate, just to make a healthy relationship so it's safer for both of us. And yes, especially for me. Because yes, my safety is a priority, right? If it was the highest priority though, I wouldn't live with my mom at all, and I wouldn't even know her. Technically, if safety was my own safety. It is, but if I gave it a permanent priority, I wouldn't be able to know my mom. Right? So the human mind then has to go through certain operations to make that sound. If someone asks me, how could you defend that? Most of what I say would make you feel even worse before you can understand. And maybe it's as simple as, she's my mom. And I don't have anyone else. And, stupid, simple, or awkward as it is, I don't have anyone else. That doesn't make it right, but it's made it worthwhile for me. And days like today, for instance, she's been pretty good to to me. I actually almost found a place to live in today. It was $1,500 seasonal rental on a local island with all the amenities, washer, dryer, everything, internet. And I'm like, this sounds good. I could write a book. I could finish writing a book there. Do you like poetry? I'm working on it. If you think that it's reasonable, perhaps. I want to show my mom that, like, not every way that she's learned to be in this world is a bad thing, but that negative energy around her makes things worse. My mom was like a lot of people's mothers and fathers. My parents were guilted into life, essentially. And it's interesting how guilt is a homophone for gold. So evil is eval, which is water. Water and woman. So you have water. Who has the most water? Women. They have a womb. They have a special place to fill with water. In the placenta or whatever. Not the placenta, sorry. The birth sac or whatever it's called. I don't really know the terms. But let's just say the idea of a fish out of water is a pretty good way of looking at what comes out of the vagina. Hell, when women orgasm and they produce fluid, it expels fluid. I've seen videos, porn if you will, where women just keep orgasming and spewing water out of their vagina or fluid, whatever it is. I wouldn't want to drink it, but it's still interesting. You know? They're usually of foreign extraction. I notice Filipino women just seem to be at the rhino level. You know, you see Filipino women, like 19-year-old, they're at the rhino level of, you know, and then you see like a 19 or 16-year-old girl. I think some of them might be 16, but they're supposed to be 18. And they got these tiny little dildos. Like Mickey Mouse. That doesn't sound right, does it? I don't completely agree with it, but there it is. And when I was 16, I never got to see what a naked girl looked like, or 18 or whatever. And now I can whenever I want for free. It's like, it's changed my life. It's not everything, but when you've never seen a girl naked, you get to see, like, how do these things work? Right? What does the guy do? What does she do? And I know it's not necessarily reality, but it's something. People always think porn is so negative, but it's like, it's there. What about for men, for instance, who have been sexually assaulted and raped by women, been abused, and they just want a safe environment to see what a vagina looks like, and what different kinds of tits look like, and what their nipples look like, and what they look like when they're laying in different positions. And you can go onto these webcams, and the woman will change position, the model, as they call them, like every 15 minutes, and show different parts of their body and play with themselves. They'll put on their clothes, they'll sit there, they'll chat to whomever, and then they'll do it again. And it says like, 500 tokens till we reach the goal, which will be like, masturbate or take off my clothes or something, and anal expressions, and it's gross, of course. I mean, I can understand you have a gag reflex, but I don't do it a lot. But I'll go on there and it doesn't really make me horny so much anymore. Sometimes I find the things that makes me horniest is when I see young girls sucking their boyfriend's dick. I don't know, for some reason even though I'd never ask a girl to do that, it's the thing that makes me the horniest for some reason. Maybe that's why girls do it. Guys seem to like it, I guess. I don't think I'd really like it in real life. I just think I like the fantasy of it, quite frankly. I mean, the only one I want to touch my penis is me, but because they're so rough with it, really. I'm like, I was having internet sex. Maybe that's the only sex I guess I've had. With this girl once on the internet. And I remember the last thing she said, and I don't think I needed much more to be said. And it just had something to do with kissing the tip of my penis. And it was just like, okay, I'm done. And that was it. It was just like, I was like, oh. So, easily stimulated. But no, I would never pursue a physical relationship with a female because they're too dangerous. I look at who they're surrounded by quite often. It's like their boundaries are really porous. But like they really have to suss out like where this person comes from. And I see women's very different personalities, right? More aggressive, less aggressive. Like the cougar I've met here, she's this poor me sort of cougar. So hello, and then it's like, oh, I've got problems. Oh, my personal life. Oh, just I feel so depressed today. Oh, I think I should get a camera. It's so beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. It's like, okay. Because she's not really out here to get exercise, I guess. My life is so painful, but I don't want to dwell. And I said to her, I said, like, well, I dwell all the time. That's 90% of what I do. I was like, I didn't say, like, how can you not dwell on things? Because, of course, she does. She's just lying to herself. Right? She's not very healthy. Everyone dwells. Why wouldn't you dwell on things? Like, that's what you have a mind for. It's for dwelling. We are the thought dwellers, the emotional dwellers. It's just that as little village dwellers, thought dwellers, it doesn't always seem to come to a lot for a lot of people unless they, read a book or become part of an organization of thinking. And that's good. Organizations of thinking. Seems like a pretty good human idea. And then there's like problems with organizations of thinking, okay? And then there's people who are not the same level of loyalty to organizations of thinking, who recognize many, if not most, of the practical value of organizations of thinking, who are yet extraordinarily sensible for very painful reasons of the downsides of organizations of thinking, right? Put that in your category. A man who calls himself a Satanist, and I think that's my idea of a church of stuff to talk about. Just ideas of things to think about. If not necessarily thinking itself. Preparation for thinking. Sounds like something that would be in a philosophy syllabus. Why do we think? Write 1,000 words that show that you are capable of not thinking at all. But it must be coherent, grammatically correct sentences. You can just repeat the last 5 minutes of this video. Hand it into your professor, be like, good job. Anyway, I'm irreverent to academics, but because you can be. It's fine. Nobody's getting hurt. And I suffer all of the feelings of inferiority that I should, given the monumental levels of education that people are able to acquaint themselves with and get real jobs, make real money, take the garbage out once a week. I think one of the reasons that made it difficult for me to finish school is the prospect of working. I got as close as I can, and then it's like it was too much work to continue going to school because it was in my third year of university. I was getting too close to having to have a job, so I quit, and I basically became mentally ill. Really, it was just a tremendous fear of working. It's like my motto when I was in grade 7. I missed the last 2 months of school and had 2.5 months of summer. I still got straight A's, and I missed the entire Egypt section. I always thought that was interesting. I missed Egypt, and they have the book with the hieroglyphs and all that shit. All made up shit, right? It's as made up there as it is in the books. And these people get together and they make these languages. You ever thought that there are people who could invent languages? Right? Just like Robert Downey Jr. does blackface in a movie called Tropic of Thunder. I don't recommend it. I don't usually make movies, but if you wanted to find it, I saw a clip on YouTube where you kind of get, I didn't understand right away until the punchline that he was playing a black man. In the movie, he's doing blackface and he's playing an actor playing a black man. And it's the first time you've ever seen on film someone play a black man, to the point that myself, who didn't know the trick, if you will, the conceit, I really believed he was a black man. And then when I figured it out, it's like, because the movie makes it obvious, I guess, because it has to self-reference. Otherwise, technically, he's just doing blackface. And their ability to do this, it's like, Right? There's a lot more to being black in film than meets the eye. But the thing is, the point that I'm making is that white royalty can mimic any race, right? And when they don't do it well, they're not doing it well on purpose. So when the Prime Minister of Canada is seen doing blackface in college, he's not doing it well. To really become a black person, like Oprah or Denzel Washington or Samuel L. Jackson, who were probably, I don't know for sure, probably played by white actors. It's really neat. Same thing with Barack Obama. Right? At least one, I think one of the host actors was Jerry Seinfeld. I gotta take a crap. I've got to. So I don't want to be aggressive to this woman, but I just, 3 days in a row, she loves to chat about her personal problems. So I'm gonna have to put up a bit of a boundary. Magically. If you walk anywhere long enough, you're gonna end up chatting with people you don't really like. Unfortunately, it happens. It's like, and as soon as she sees me, you can tell that she's a little excited. It's like, because now it's like, oh, we're gonna have a conversation every time we see each other. I don't want to talk to her. I don't have anything in common with her. She's not interested in me as a person. Things I tell her don't seem to stay in her brain. And she seems to enjoy the capacity that things she tells me stays in my brain. Right? She's a classic codependent female, right? And she's presents a weak energy. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I'm retired. Can you help me? Like Eeyore, right? Her life's not so bad. There's just nothing better to do. So it's like a personality disorder, more than there's anything really to be depressed about. Right? She's just chosen a life that's depressing. Heidi. I just said Heidi. Heidi. His name's not Heidi though. His name was not Heidi. So I have another crap coming. That's pretty good. 2 big craps in one day. It's nice. Rain has stopped. Deep breathing, some people call it mana breath. The idea of the air as mana. And over time I've come to appreciate the air as mana. Especially when I get home and the condo's kind of stuffy and I get out of the bath and I open the door and I breathe the air, whatever weather. And when you're nice and cozy, you're just like, that's the best thing about having a cabin or a warm fire or something going. You just open the door and just step outside. It's like, so nice. It's like nectar, isn't it? Fresh air. So it means a lot. Imagine just spending the whole day breathing this stuff. It's like the ultimate drug, really, combined with marijuana in my case. But I don't talk a lot about my marijuana smoking, but I will say that I smoke a little bit more the last week or two, and I watch this. It goes up and down. So, under different conditions. There's a car coming. There's a little piece of wood. It's nice, man. I do meet mostly nice people here. Brenda Boring, in her pear-shaped body and her straight black hair, with her, is boring, right? And she just makes statements, and she's like, wants you to fill in the spaces. She doesn't even work at thinking. She's so lazy. She just expresses little things about herself over, my personal life is, and okay, all right, period. Imagine meeting some person on a trail somewhere and kind of mentally texting them. It's like, my personal life is shit and the world's really getting to me. I'm retired. and I can't figure out what to do. I'm thinking maybe you're getting a camera. Period. Oh, well, that's a lot of information. Why don't you stay home more often? I get a little embittered. I meet so many older women that aren't worth talking to. I just call them cougars because they're really getting more out of me than I'm getting out of them in a million years. I don't enjoy knowing them. They don't learn anything useful about me. They get nothing out of me. You say the things that they don't listen to what you say. Have any reason to believe that you're anything more than a receptacle. Maybe it's kind of just cool that you have a penis and you have testosterone and it makes them feel good. And they figure, hey, why not? You only live once. And I can talk to this good-looking younger man, and good day for everyone. At no point, and this is the power of chemicals in a female's body and a male's body, do they really think about whether or not that's of any real use to me, right? But yet I spend my whole life trying to be considerate to females. Right? It's hilarious. It's such a hypocrisy. That's why I think that, in a sense, femininity is a cult. When you see hypocrisy, it's like there's a suspension of disbelief, there's an intoxication, and there's an estrogen imbalance in every cult situation, which is surrounding every act of violence in the world, which is always the spirit of schizophrenia, narcissism, personality disorder, and all these other mental illnesses, so to speak. All violence, all cults, violence, cult. They go hand in hand. So all violence relates to cults. All violence, you understand? So when you start saying, like, why do we have so much crime in this area? Society, economics, you're talking about the cult of society. Right? I'm talking about why society is bad and what happens when there's violence that makes us think that society has failed, this person or all of us. Okay? That's because we're talking about cult psychology, which has negative connotations as to being like a prison psychology. So then you see people kind of in prison. And you think, well, all the thought that we've given people to believe is the right thought for human beings is like an extraordinary range of lying, which is too much information when you don't need it, information you don't need at all, and not enough of the information you need. On the lips, and many other curses besides, on the lips of every man, woman, and child going through the common experience of living in that society and under its, if oppressive, industrial demands and insinuations. 90% of which, like an iceberg, aren't really considered industrial demands and poisons, but just the way life is, the way God ordained it, the way Adam and Eve ordained it, the way the devil ordained it, and the way anything that has any real purpose to your life ordained it, until you really want to know what the purpose of your life is finding out what ordained it to be, as good and awful as it is. Once you know what an awful piece of shit you really are, then it's not worth having an ego anymore, right? So, welcome to the world. Is that any way to greet a child? Or a sacred person? Would you ask someone into your home and then say you have to sign this waiver? That's why I don't want to come into your home. I don't want to interact with people because you're all in this cult. It comes with this ledger, this weight on human beings, this gravity. It's right in the language, just like grave is in gravity. Right? Vacuum. Right? Vacuum. What does the vacuum extract? But the very essence, the top of the carpet, which is like the soil. Nature abhors a vacuum. Nature doesn't want to draw from the essence of the truth and the soil and the greatness of the earth. The empty vacuum of space, where there's no soil, anything to grow except all of our most incredible thoughts about the cosmos. Apparently nothing grows in space except all of our weird scientific thoughts about it, where stars go to die, and even the sun is on death row. And this is considered normal by educated people because they don't consider the emotional and cognitive implications of such a statement. Whereas if someone said, hey, you're condemned to die because I don't like you, they'd be like, oh, I don't like that. Why are you telling me that? That doesn't sound very nice. I think I went the wrong way. Yeah, you're right. It's this way. Just keep going. Oh, God. But thou, O Lord, be not far off. O thou, my help, hasten to my assistance. Oh, fuck me. Oh, okay. Good. Yeah, I'm trying to understand this forest. There's one section I used to go to, and I forget how I used to get there. But there's a nice little meadow, and I see the stream right here, so I guess I could just go to the stream here. I guess I want to satisfy my curiosity. There's a bit of a rough trail here, so I'm going to take it for a bit just to try to figure out, like, if I have to go this way, if I have to go downstream or upstream to get to this meadow. I think it's down there, so there must be a trail. Yeah, that trail down there. Well, I'm not going to take it all the way back. Well, let's see where this goes. There's an ambulance. Huh. Interesting. It looks like there's an area up here. I just have to satisfy my fucking curiosity. I'm not crazy. Well, I haven't been down here before. This is interesting. Oh, this goes across the trail. Wow. That's different. I'm going to go back. Wow. This trail must go up somewhere quite far. Where would it go to? Interesting. I'm not going to take it because it's taking me way out of my way. But fascinating. A little piece of human garbage, refuse. Well, there's another trail going down that way, along the stream. Well, there's quite a lot to explore down here. I have a Larabar. This is too much excitement for me. Yeah, so let me try to take the most direct route out of here. Well, that's proving I don't really know where I am. Huh? Back on the trail. Better to explore this in the spring. There's my shithole. Okay, where are we going now, Leonard? Well, since we totally don't know where we're going. There was a place down there I really like going, and then I forget how to get there now. I'm trying to think. Yeah. Oh well. And then when you finally figure out where it is, it's like really easy the next time. But start making my way out. Body's warming up. That's the thing about walking in these woods, you know. as opposed to a manicured path that you get warmer. Oh, there's the path. At least I've developed a facility for walking out here, man. I did develop, I think, maybe it was a good thing about schools. There are two things that developed very acutely in me, one after the other, and I think at least it was better that it was in the sequence that happened to me, which was that I learned in school, rightly or wrongly, that I enjoyed feeling like a smart person. I enjoyed being smart. Now, it's a pretty relative thing when you're 5 years old compared to when you're 50, but that's what I liked. I liked the feeling of being smart. And then, as I got older, I had the crushing weight of just how not smart I was. And I learned to be honest through pain and depression that I did not have the intelligence to understand the world or what it wanted from me and why it would hurt me. Let's say my world would hurt me because I didn't give it what it wants. And it would take what it wanted forcefully from me whenever it wanted to. So I was young in my 20s, sitting meditating in the park, and 2 police officers sexually assaulted me, right? And took evident pleasure in doing so. And I'm pretty sure, in deference to all the police officers out there, they probably didn't think of it as sexual assault, okay? But it is. And they do it all the time. And all you have to do is look into their eyes. It tells you everything. The eyes are the truth, right? The eyes are the truth. They tell you the state of the mind that they're in at that time. And there was no reason to be predatory toward me. I was unarmed. They came up behind me and did what they needed to do within 100 yards of the police station in broad daylight. I had an auntie who was raped by the RCMP in broad daylight in her school during the week, right? So I have an idea of what the RCMP are capable of. And you would say, well, that's unfair. You can't say that about the police. You can't say that. You can't tell people that. But I can, and I have to. I'm obliged to my community and the world around me to report that the RCMP of Canada are operating in bad faith and always have been on Canadian soil. It's not even their land. When they put on that uniform, they're actually invaders. They're putting on the costume of a colonist to whom the land does not belong. They're practicing a law that does not belong to the land. Now, I'm not a sovereign citizen type of person, but I understand black magic. And what they're practicing is something that is bound to take people out of their peace. They're not peace officers. Everything they do disturbs the peace, right? If they want to be peace officers, they should take off those humiliating uniforms and start acting like decent people. I'd pay you to do that. Keep the salaries, double their salaries, and tell them to stay home and play with themselves and go on welfare. We would solve all the crime in the world. You know, we don't need them. But if they need to put on the uniforms and walk around and shoot people or whatever the fuck they think they do, and ride with one testicle to hope that cancer stops, go do it. I have no need for them. I've never seen anything but violence from the police to myself and others, and yet I've never committed a crime in my entire life. I'm just, innocent man, right? They're disgusting. They're disgusting people, but it's the way they roll. It's who they are, or at least who they think they are. And we all have to put up with them. Don't hurt them, just put up with them. They're like retards, walking around in Halloween costumes. Listen to them, do what they say. They don't even like their jobs most of the time, but it probably gets them laid, They can go speak at their child's school. Hey, I wear a Halloween costume for a living. These are drugs, just say no. Meanwhile, they're helping to spread meth and street drugs all over the place. You can't never believe a police officer, but don't do anything about it. Understand that they are professional liars. It's witchcraft, professional lying. The law is just a pack of lies that people have managed to spin into enough of a yarn and to control people enough that they obey creating this yarn every day. Just look what a judge in Canada needs people to do, to bow and scrape every time they get up. It's ridiculous. Right? right? The lawyers have to bow every time you stand up, every time you sit down. If they don't, the judge, male or female, will verbally abuse them, basically sexually assault them in public. It's ridiculous. I came into one courtroom in my life, and the guy said, "Oh, you have to bow." I didn't. I sat down. I'm not bowing for anybody, motherfucker. I bow to the tree of my family. You want me to bow, you better fucking cut off my head. Shove it up your ass. I don't bow to anybody. I don't bow to the fucking Canada. I don't bow to your judges, and I don't bow to your fucking police officers. At all. Fuck you. I don't bow to your fucking flags, your little epaulets. Shove them up your useless, cowardly asses. Make till they bleed. And this is not because I hate the people who wear these uniforms. It's that the uniform hates the man. They hate them. Why would you want to wear humiliating uniforms? And they get to call that a profession. All they do is hurt people. All they do is molest people. They haven't, around here, they don't even have enough to do. Right? But don't believe me. Right? I've spent my time listening. They the ones that tell me this. Right? Police have told me this my whole life. Right? They'll tell you this. Their families, their children will tell you. You know, every single member of the family of the police I've ever met was a prostitute or a maniac of some kind. Everyone has been raped. They're rapists. They have no law. They're lawless human beings. They're in a cult. And they deserve all the protection that a victim of a cult deserves. That's why you do what they say. They're like Mormons that can convert you at gunpoint, right? You have to practice the police officer's witchcraft. So when I'm around them, I don't practice their witchcraft, right? I can protect myself from it, but I don't have to show them that. And they're too stupid to notice, right? They can't practice. They get frustrated with me because they can't practice their witchcraft on me. I don't need to be a sovereign citizen. That's bullshit anyway. I just need to be an honest man, right? And you look them in the eyes, and you can see the cowardice. And no, I've every pair of police officers I looked into, just a complete weak coward. There's nothing there. The uniform is all they are. They take it off, they're nobody. They're nothing. They've never done anything real in their entire lives to help with the human problem, ever. They're in a cult. It's like when people go in a cult, they stop developing. And when they stop developing, they're ready to go in a cult. Cults aren't about developing the person. Every job, every profession should help you develop as a person. But they don't. It's a sham. It's a religion. Right? For putting poor people in prison. The ones who aren't already imprisoned by their lives. And the police are imprisoned. They're imprisoned in their way of life. That's why their children become prostitutes. They're creeps. They're crazies. Right? Of course they are. No town in Canada wants an RCMP officer walking around in their fucking little predatory cruisers. I've seen them talking to children. When I see a police officer talking to a child, I just stop and stare. And they usually drive away because they're pedophiles, right? And I'll cross the road in front of their car just to let them know I don't give a fuck about them. And you can see they think about stopping, but they're cowards. They have nothing to stop me for, right? And then they'd have to talk to a real man, and they hate that. They hate talking to a real man because they're vampires, right? They live under the power of the sun, under the rule of Canadian law. There's no sun in these people. There's nothing burning inside of them but hell. They're disgusting, but don't do anything to them. Don't touch them. They're the ones protected by the law, not you. They're protected like any coward. They got Teflon around them. You can't touch them. That's why they like being police officers. Like any cult, it makes them feel strong. It gives them a sense of self, sense of identity, the things that they look for. And everyone approves of them, right? And they can just do whatever they want. I don't even know where I am right now. There's my police rant for today. More people need to speak up about it because the fact is the police themselves will tell you, right? They tell me they're sociopaths every time, right? They're sick, pitiful, weak human beings, right? Right? The great deterrent about police is that, indeed, no one has any reason to want to deal with them as people, as private citizens, or anything else. They're the most useless beings you'll ever meet. The biggest possible liars, right? They're so filled with themselves. Their noble cause. They kill tens of thousands of people every year. And that's just with their tasers. Jesus Christ, right? They kill 300 people a day by the improper use of tasers in the United States. Think about it. Think about how much pharmaceutical medication kills children, about 10,000 a year. That doesn't include all the other mortifications that don't lead to death, like a failed attempt at suicide. You don't hear about that, do you? But you love your psychiatrist, hey? You love your religions because you're terrified of taking care of yourself, right? Being all alone in the world. All these secure, hardworking people who don't want to be alone and take care of themselves. Don't want to see and feel how vulnerable they really are. Sure, it's great to have a house, a warm home, a place of happiness. That's what we all want. But to wall yourself off against the world because your mind is not adequately acquainted with it, it just leads to death. Machiavelli should be sitting inside every home, and the Bible should be burned. Machiavelli has more information in the preface than it does in all the Bibles in the world. But you have to think. That's the tough part. The Bible doesn't require that you think. So it seems easier to people. It's like a drug. Never get tired of thinking. That's what living is for. If you have a desire to live, you think. Right? Living. You understand me? Breathing, wanting to live a long time, right? Fuck yes. Hail Satan. There's a beautiful bald eagle. Yeah, we're doing good. I should sit for a bit. Have some food or something. Nice. I've got all kinds of good treats with me today. Oh. I'll turn this off for a bit.